ZACK'S here with Matt Chatham, the Pats in Houston to take on the 7-4 Texans. It's going to be a good one tonight, but we're going to kick this thing off with a few fun facts, if you will. The Pats 10-1 so far on the season, but also get this, 10-1 against the Texans all time.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting fact right there. They've won their last 8 against the Texans. But the Pats team a little bit banged up, something that I've certainly never heard of before. And I asked before if you had, you said no way.
Yeah.
The Pats with 2 planes down to Houston, one with sick players, one without. How big of an impact is this going to have on the play?
Okay, so it's the kind of question, Courtney, if I didn't have last week's information, I would answer this entirely different, because certainly all the years I was in NFL locker rooms, the sickness hits. It goes through in a wave. I would say personally, if I was one of the guys that had heard it was going through the locker room, I would inject it in my veins. Get me sick. I want to be sick. Here's the thing. I want to be sick on Wednesday. I want it through me. The last thing you want is not sick on Wednesday, not sick on Thursday. Hey, I feel great. Arrive at the hotel in Houston, have your meal, go to night things, wake up the next morning, and you're sick as a dog. So if it's going around, it's really hard. I mean, they tell you to wash your hands, and everyone's using all the different little emergency kits and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's a game where you touch one another every play. You know, everyone's touching everyone. We're in huddles. You're tight. You're tackling people. It's really hard to not have this stuff be communicable. It's unavoidable, quite frankly. But the reason I say that this makes me kind of give pause, that this is a pretty serious deal, is because the story we heard about Marcus Cannon last week. Now, sick is sick. Guys are sick throughout the NFL. It's not a Patriots thing any different than anyone else. This happens each week. But Marcus played through that game, and we saw him, I believe it was about the 3rd series, where he actually came out. So he left. They've been talking about it. It was the joke from Scar that, hey, if Marcus is playing on Sunday, if he doesn't, I will, ha-ha. It's kind of a good line from Scar last week. But then obviously Marcus was able to suit up. But there was a story, it came from Coach Belichick in postgame, where he said he was barely able to get his pads on and off. He was just, this after the game. And that's a different level of concern than just puking, weak, not able to play kind of thing. So it's one thing and it's one dude, and it made for a really good story, the way he was able to fight through that. Guys will love him forever for that. But when you hear 8 guys in the middle of the week now, when you hear separate planes, you kind of go into this game not knowing what's going on. Now, it could get into the game, and it could be completely fine. It could be a non-story. Or you can see like 15 guys over on their hands and knees on the sideline. So I just don't know what to make of this. I guess we all kind of cross our fingers and watch it together, because we'll find out in live time. And
of course, we will not know until the game actually happens, but that was a major storyline, so we had to talk about it a little bit. But let's go into something that we know for certain. STEPHON, GILMORE, and DeAndre Hopkins will be kind of the matchup of the evening, if you will.
Provided he's not sick.
Yes, exactly. But here's some stats for you. Hopkins going against GILMORE since GILMORE became a Patriot. 2 games, 15 receptions, 154 yards, no touchdowns. GILMORE going against Hopkins, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. Who wins this matchup tonight?
So I believe it was the last matchup they had against one another, maybe 2 back. But in that particular game, he gave up a handful of catches. Again, I probably should know these stats before I came to air with it. But 6, 7, 8, whatever it was. But it was for like 50-some yards, 60-some yards. It was modest, right? It was like a bunch of catches, a decent amount of yards, but no pain, no blood, right? And I think that's the most important part with Hopkins. You just don't want to give up the 60-yard, completely plastered coverage, still goes over you, catches it. The one where he's completely covered, and there shouldn't be a ball fit in, yet he catches it. Or he makes someone miss a tackle on one of those sideline plays, busts it, and makes a big play. He's the game breaker guy, right? So catches without the blood on the end, not that big a deal. So I think STEPHON GILMORE played really, really well against him. There are some stats there, but I think if you had to go into this game and pick a guy to play on him, use any corner of the league, you'd want GILMORE. Now, I put it this way with this group. I got lulled into it as I watched the film. I kind of turned it on for the weekend. I want to watch a handful of the Texans games and see what they've been about. I actually think as you watch them, you become less enamored with Hopkins. He's tremendous. I'm not downplaying him. But you realize that they've got several people who can hurt you that way. So it's not going to just be about, can GILMORE stop Hopkins? Will Fuller, who's always had this hamstring injury, he's been up and down since he's come out of Notre Dame with soft tissue stuff. There are times, maybe because they both wear long dreads and they're both pretty tall and long guys, where you'll think, Will Fuller looks a little bit like DeAndre Hopkins. So he's another very, very serious vertical threat. Fells, the tight end, a 6'7" guy, can catch balls over just about anyway. I can never say his name. Kiki Cutie? Did I get that right? Cutie?
Pretty
Something
close.
like that? Close. Kenny Stills. I mean, the point of it is they've got a lot of explosive players. They've kind of put their offense together that way. So I would feel relatively comfortable as any person possibly could be relative to Hopkins because he's so good, having Gilmore on him. But I think the greater issue is they need to defend those kinds of plays against like 5 or 6 guys. So it's a pretty big challenge.
Well, you bring up Fuller. So if you have Gilmore on Hopkins, who are you going to match up Fuller with?
So I actually don't know if Gilmore goes wire to wire on Hopkins. I mean, they play enough man concepts, but it doesn't have to be match across the ball and stuff. And we don't want to go that far in the weeds, but I'll say we know Jason McCourty was an activator, right? So folks at home, if you hadn't caught that little piece of news, Jason missed last week, going to miss it again with a groin, so he's still a little banged up. So your other alternative here is a very comparable player in J.C. Jackson, but a guy a little less experienced, right? So J.C. and Jason are kind of similar body types. Best of my recollection, they're south of 6 foot, but they're not, not short guys, but they're not tall guys either. So that's where Gilmore's different. He's long himself. Jawan Williams is a guy I'm a little bit interested in, the rookie from Vandy, I believe it is, who's the 6'4" corner. He's been up and down throughout the season. He's the kind of guy where I wonder if, you know what, let's mix it up. We don't have to go wire to wire, down after down, where we become a little bit predictable. I think Jawan at 6'4", handling Hopkins at 6'4" would be an interesting, not down in, down out, but just occasional mix-up. Mix up where you use Gilmore because, Fuller can be an issue too. That guy is as fast as hell and he can stretch the field. So JC's going to be out there. I expect that Jawan may have a role if he's active. I guess we'll find that out as it gets closer to game day. I also think you have to really keep an eye on Jonathan Jones because he's just been a stopper. Jonathan is fully capable of sliding over and covering Hopkins in certain situations as well. Or Jones can be an adjutant on the tight end position, or he can cover backs. He can do just about anything. And because they've got two pretty serious slot types with Kenny Stills and Cutie, I don't know if I'm still blowing that name, but those two guys, I just think at the end of the day, there's a long-winded way to say they've got like 5 or 6 defensive backs who can cover just about anyone, and I love the flexibility of the young guy in Williams as a possibility to kind of mix things up.
Okay, briefly, I don't know if it's too early for you to start talking about it because Bill Belichick says real football starts after Thanksgiving, something along those lines, but Gilmore, arguably the best defensive player on this best defense. Do you think Defensive Player of the Year for Gilmore?
You asked for briefly. I'll give it to you.
You don't do anything briefly.
Sure, but I don't care. Who cares about the offseason awards?
You don't care.
I think he's a great candidate for it, but I make fun of people each and every week when they start talking about NFL MVP. Maybe he will be. You know what the key point on that is? When the Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and MVP are announced each season, I've stopped caring by that point. Why? Because then you're thinking about the team stuff in Super Bowl. That stuff is always, oh yeah, those are the teams, the guys that didn't win.
Okay,
so,
fair.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, he's having a great year, though.
All right, now let's talk about some Texans offense. Deshaun Watson. I'm kind of a Deshaun Watson gal, I want to say.
Okay.
I was a big fan of him at Clemson. Hopefully
you
he didn't have his Popeyes chicken sandwich this week because he said that's what cleared his eye during his eye injury. But
Fair
some
enough.
stats for him. He's been dangerous outside the pocket.
Yep.
But quick stats, 11 games, completed 249 of 361 passes, over 2,800 yards, 20 touchdowns. For you, do you think he's a big threat against this Patriots defense?
It's a huge threat. I mean, I think this is the best mobile passer they'll have faced. I know people that are sensitive to the whole Lamar Jackson thing will bristle a little bit. Oh, what about Lamar and all that Lamar's doing? The difference between these two guys, and it's super important, is Lamar Jackson is almost impossible to tackle in the open field as a one-on-one. The Ravens use him differently, though, than Deshaun's used today. If a Lay fan, anyone's out there, this is your first year following the Patriots, I think you'll be able to pick up on this in a minute. The way Watson is used is different than Lamar. Lamar, if you watch this afternoon's game where they were facing off against the Niners, he's a threat to run as part of the play design. Every play, Lamar might take off. Like it's designed for him as a possibility to take off in virtually every play. Deshaun Watson is a more normal, from the gun, there's a read option occasionally, but he's a pocket passer. He's a pocket passer who can take off and run. That's different. So you'll see Lamar Jackson, yes, complete some mobile balls, yes, scramble a little bit, but usually that stuff's coming off of misdirection and all this stuff. And one example of today's game, Mark Andrews was wide open, the tight end for the Ravens, wide open down the middle. There's nobody near him because everyone's freaking out about who's got the ball and if Lamar's going to run. You won't see that with Deshaun. Deshaun's biggest issues, and I love that you talked about some pocket numbers, sort of him scrambling, him moving outside of the pocket. That's the biggest issue. He's a right-handed quarterback. He's pretty athletic. But he loves to escape back out the pocket and to his arm side, right? So as I watch more and more tape, I thought Indy did the best job. Indy played him pretty tight. It was like 2017, something like that. Indy did a great job of understanding where you don't want him to go. He's going to scramble. He'll go back, and he'll take some like 17-yard sacks, 20-yard sacks. He likes to take some pretty dangerous plays. But I think if you have him escaping backwards, not at the front of the pocket, not to his arm side, to the other side, it's your best bet, right? The last portion to this relative to him, and I'm kind of stealing some of my game keys at the end, but I think it's okay. I think it's that important with this guy. It's his ball security, and I think that's actually different than Lamar Jackson. Lamar's been tremendous this year hanging on to the football. People want to hit him. People want to get the ball off him. They can't. Actually fumbled today for the first time this year and turned one over. But Deshaun has had 8 fumbles. He's had 8 fumbles. I think his picks number is close to 10, something like that. Maybe not exactly, but the point of it is they've had a hard time hanging onto the ball, and Lamar will take. Lamar doesn't take the bad sacks. He gets rid of it as untackleable. Deshaun takes these weird ones where he just keeps gaining ground, even on like 4-man rushes, and gets knocked down. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the Patriots defense against him just to get the ball off him.
Okay, let's go back to Patriots offense, shall we? Just follow along with us. N'Keal Harry, Jacoby Myers, we've seen some good play out of them in their early days as Patriots. But then where do you see their trajectory kind of going, especially you enter a Philip Dorsett, a healthy Mohamed Sanu?
Both, yes.
I mean, everybody is sick apparently right now, but where do you see this going?
Yeah, those guys coming back from like actual tissue injuries and not internal ones. So it's a great question. It's something I think we all just kind of have to watch and find out. But one thing I will point out that just randomly kind of grabbed my attention as I was studying this week was Mohamed Sanu's final touchdown as a Falcon was actually in man-to-man coverage against the Texans, and it was against this guy named Lonnie Johnson, who's a second-round pick of the Texans, young player, pretty good defensive back for them, guy they're real high on, up-and-coming kind of dude. But it was Mohamed Sanu, the Falcon, one-on-one against Lonnie in the slot. Mohamed smokes him, scores a touchdown from like 15, 16 out, something like that. So the interesting angle to that is with the add-in of Mohamed back and healthy, Lonnie had missed last week as well with an ankle injury. So both guys coming back with injured ankles, facing one another. The vet has had a good amount of success. I think he had like 45 yards or so, 5-ish catches in that game and a touchdown. So a pretty good day for him. The thing that interests me about that, Courtney, though, is in those kind of situations, he knows he's back and healthy. He flips on the tape. It's the oddity of, we faced these guys this year, and I faced that young guy. I smoked him pretty good. Hey, Josh. Hey, Tom. I got this guy. Get me isolated on him. So in that kind of situation, I'm excited to see the trajectory. I love that you use that word, of Mohamed's role in the offense. I think we could easily, if that ankle is as good as I think it is, but we just don't know that, but he could easily be an 8 to 10 target guy right alongside Julian, really the rest of the way out. I see N'Keal sort of falling into a big play in the red zone, couple first down conversions, deep comebacks to the outside. Indy actually did that kind of nicely against Houston. It's a concept we haven't seen the Patriots run a lot of. You'll think back to, this is random, but in this building, this is in Houston, where the Patriots faced the Falcons in the Super Bowl, whole 28-3 thing. The number one pass concept they kept hitting on with Chris Hogan, with Malcolm Mitchell, was that deep comeback. And that's a route that N'Keal dropped against the Cowboys last week. You'll remember he got himself wide open, ran a deep comeback at like 20, came back to 18, just beyond the sticks, frames it real nice, but big sloppy day. No one was catching anything, and he had a drop. So I'm looking to see the occasional deep comeback, the occasional catch and run, the occasional maybe, not slant stuff, but maybe just a screen to him, and then hit him in a red zone. So I look for N'Keal to be a 3 to 4 to maybe 5 catch a week kind of guy. And that's a really nice role to have. I think the tough part will come down to him and Dorsett, because Dorsett kind of fits in that third range too. So who's on the field? If you want to go 4, I love this 4. But I think the guy who's probably most likely to get snipped and has been doing a tremendous job is Jacoby Myers. Jacoby filled in excellent last week. Actually looked even much more active and involved than N'Keal was. So that's where it kind of gets tough. Maybe N'Keal's just a red zone guy because his height and his ability to win one-on-one. And maybe Jacoby still carves himself out a role. I don't know, but it's a good problem to have. I think they've got 4 or 5 really good guys. Well,
something that I hate doing is making anything too stat heavy or going back in history, because you know what? History. It's football, anything could happen. But this is something that struck my fancy.
Okay.
Under Bill O'Brien, Texans are 34-2 when they allow 19 points or fewer.
Okay.
The last time the Pats put up 20 points was 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Ravens, they lost that game.
Okay.
How important is it for this Pats offense to not rely on the defense, but to really put up numbers?
See, I think this is one of those weeks. I'll put it this way. I think this is one of those months in Patriots history where the context is literally the most important thing. Like, without the context, we could dry hump a stat into whatever, and it wouldn't make as much sense as I think is what contextually is there. So what I mean by that is the last 4 weeks of Patriots, 3 of the 4 weeks the Patriots have gone out and played in really terrible conditions. It was like 16 mile an hour wind in Philly. It was cold, windy, so it was bad wind days, really hard to throw the ball down the field. Obviously, Cleveland was a monsoon, but only a monsoon for about 2.5 quarters, so it let up. They got a little more out of it, but that was a bad weather day. And then the Dallas game's the worst day of weather you'll have. Really, I think it's in Gillette's history, quite frankly. That's not a hyperbole.
Going
I think
sideways.
Sideways, just above freezing, barely above freezing, and it didn't relent from 2 hours prior to like 30 minutes after. It doesn't get any worse than that. So my point is in the other game's the Raven game, right? And that one wasn't bad. So, but those numbers are derived from 3 of the 4 kind of games, which will have nothing to do with Houston. It's fair weather, right? So I think we could really plausibly see the Patriots come out and score a high 20s game. I don't expect them to be back to the low 30s, where I think they will hit as they enter the playoffs, as they always tend to crest that way. But what we're looking at right now is growth curve, right? We're looking at Isaiah Wynn's second game back, but Wynn was one of those guys on the illness list. So to what extent was he affected? Is he going to play full speed? I don't know if we know that. It's now the third game together, really the second though, with Wynn and the 2 tight ends alongside each other, Ben, Matt Lacoste, and Wynn. So you have this 3-man surface that's only played a couple games together and doesn't have anything to do with the stat that we were talking about. So I think those 3 guys together, now healthy Mohamed Sanu with N'Keal Harry now on the field, it wasn't even in any of those games. And you have a collection of people who I think their ceiling's much higher than those groups that were on the field in those other games, especially now with Sony Michel. And Sony had a great game last week. So if you get this reinvention of the offense, because that offensive line is collectively back together as the 5 that we expected, all of a sudden I think a lot of the old stats don't make much sense and won't carry forward.
When you bring up the weather from the Dallas game, it does kind of make more sense why we have so many sick players on our roster
Yeah, no,
right
I
now.
think that's got something to do with it, yeah.
But while we are in Watertown, we've got 2 guys at NRG Stadium, so let's send it to Doug Kyde and Zach Cox for more.
Thanks, guys. It's a beautiful day here in Houston. Too bad we're playing this game indoors tonight, but this is, to me, an intriguing matchup where Patriots offense and the Patriots defense both have some tests. Houston's defense has not been very good, so this is a chance for the Patriots offense to get going a little bit, whereas the Texans offense is very good, and it's just another test here for the Patriots defense. So we're talking players to watch here. Zach, who are you paying close attention to against the Texans?
My guy I'm paying close attention to is actually going to be a former Texan, and that's John Simon, linebacker, edge rusher. Doesn't really get as much publicity and as much love as guys like Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy, but he's really been a valuable player for the Patriots over the last 2 seasons, but especially this year. And going into this game against a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, doesn't have quite the speed or he's not quite as dangerous of a runner as someone like Lamar Jackson, but in that game against Lamar Jackson a couple weeks ago, John Simon did a better job than really anybody on the Patriots, especially in that front 7, of containing Lamar Jackson. I think that's going to be a big key to this game for the Patriots. Keep Deshaun Watson in that pocket. Don't let him scramble. Don't let him gain all those yards on the ground, and especially with Kyle Van Noy missing a practice this week with an illness, he's one of several Patriots players who are kind of iffy entering this game. If he's not 100%, I think we could see a lot of John Simon in this game.
Patriots do need to win this game, obviously for many reasons, but one, because that guy, Lamar Jackson, just beat the San Francisco 49ers. Unlikely the Ravens lose again this year, so the Patriots have to win out to get that #1 seed in the AFC playoffs. My guy is STEPHON Gilmore. It's the matchup that everyone's going to be watching tonight. STEPHON Gilmore against DeAndre Hopkins. Gilmore has done very well against Hopkins in the past. Gilmore's basically done well against all wide receivers in the past, especially this season, but this is another really big stage game for STEPHON Gilmore, and if he can shut down DeAndre Hopkins or even really limit him, then it's going to be hard to take away that Defensive Player of the Year award from STEPHON Gilmore. He's already the favorite right now. He blanked Amari Cooper last week against the Dallas Cowboys. If he can have a similar performance here against DeAndre Hopkins, and yeah, like I said, I mean, he's probably going to be the Defensive Player of the Year this season for the Patriots. And as I mentioned before, must-win game for the Patriots. Their schedule gets a little easier coming up, but they've got the Texans tonight, Chiefs next week, then it lessens up a little bit, but the Patriots definitely have to win these next 2 games.
Great stuff from Zach and Doug. Make sure to follow along with them on Twitter as they are there at the game, so they will be giving you updates all throughout. Now let's go to your keys of the game. Let's start with offense.
So offensively, I'm going to use a cliche, so you can all go, oh, football cliche guy. I'm going to say, but I actually think this is appropriate this week. It's not just a corny line. I think winning in the trenches is actually by far and away the biggest key for these guys, and we've actually seen this a couple times this year. It's a weird sort of just happenstance kind of deal, but the Texans have had the stats that they've gotten, the rankings that they've gotten, the things that they've sort of gotten to the point they are defensively. A lot of this has been without two guys, Bradley Roby and, well, not a lot on the second guy. Bradley Roby, a real good third corner guy from Ohio State. The Patriots have a lot of exposure with him when he was in Denver. Good player for the Texans, but he's missed like 6-ish games, 7 games, something like that, with a hamstring injury, pretty serious one. So he's been gone. This happened with the Patriots when they faced both the Ravens and Eagles, I believe it was, where some defensive backs who hadn't been on the tape that they were watching for several weeks prior all of a sudden show up, right? So this week, Bradley Roby and Lonnie Johnson, the guy that I mentioned that had been gone with his own ankle, get back. So they get 2 guys back on the back end. They have a relatively beleaguered back end as far as their secondary. But with with Joseph and Roby now a part of that, the good young player there, I think they've got a decent enough collection on the back end. They'll be buffered. They'll be a little better than they were before, and I don't think that is some glaring weakness. I say that relative to the trenches point because nothing changes on the inside. Like the stuff you saw on tape and the issues they've had there, that's identical. And it's kind of been the story of the Texans year. I'm sure if you're a Texans fan, you're like, I'm so sick of hearing this. Right. There's no J.J. Watt, there's no Jadeveon Clowney, right? I mean, everyone knows that, right? Whitney Merciless is still there, and I can never say his name. Bednarik. See, I don't think that's right.
No, I think it is.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll do a little voice translation after.
I'm just kidding because I have no clue.
Bednarik.
We're gonna every show from here for the rest of the season. We're gonna lead with someone getting that name right.
Perfect.
Anyway, that guy McKinney, I think is his last name. Should have just said B. McKinney. What was I thinking? But anyway, those are a couple high-end players, right? But their front seven, DJ Reader's a guy I kind of like, 5th rounder, huge dude, nothing knows. But what I'm sort of getting around to here is of their front seven, you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 players who are, high-end guys. They've had a lot of plug-and-play issues on the defense in the front seven. And I'm saying win in the trenches because I think that's where the mismatch lies. It's great that you got all these receivers back. But I'm really interested to see if they lean heavily on a game plan that looks a little like Dallas, even without the conditions. Really committing to Sony. I think Sony Michel wrote on him this week, did a real heavy video review on him, and I was surprised how good he looks with more carries. I think he's one of the backs. There's not a lot of backs like that, but that they can be pretty average or even mediocre at times. So on the 6th carry, on the 8th carry. But they are a wear-you-down guy, not for contact. I just think he starts to see the game better. So when Sony gets to that 15, maybe 20 or more touches, you've got that collection of guys in front of you. I mentioned Matt LaCosse and Ben Watson. Love the 2 tight end package there. Love them with Wynn alongside of them. And that last little part that is such an outlier, but kind of cool. Landon Roberts. The linebacker playing fullback and been doing a nice job the last couple of weeks. So that's a good group to battle in the trenches that has not been a part of what the Patriots have done for the many months prior to this. It's new. It's new as of last week, and we can see that group go forward against what I believe is a mismatch in that part of the game for Houston.
Okay, and defensive keys.
Well, it's 2 things. So I did mention that pocket control stuff, so I'll quickly go on this. The idea of how you come at, it's easy to say, hey, don't let them go right. That's my big point. Well, don't go right. You just have to, it's an awareness thing, and it's kind of how you configure the rush. Too deep into the weeds to get into here, but one of the things I think you can do at home is if you're watching this is sort of count how many people come across the line. So the Colts did this one thing where they only bring 3, and you'll hear announcers oftentimes on games say, oh, only against a 3-man rush. The idea of 3 is you get to leave 8, right? So you have a lot more humans back there to guard stuff. The Colts did this thing where they brought 3, which wouldn't seem to be enough against a guy like Deshaun because he runs so well, but they left the 4th as the spy. I'd like to see Jamie Collins as that spy today. Bring the 3, which leaves you more humans back there to take advantage of do you need the extra bodies in place of throwing shots to Hopkins or shots to Fuller and all that stuff. But 3 with the extra spy is one way to do it, provided the spy overplays and makes him go the other direction. And the other alternative to this is just bring pressure, right? So I think that's the thing that has bothered Watson the most. The 5th, as a delay, 4 guys come, the 5th comes later, or just bring 6, make the ball come out quick. All those things, I think, just attacking the line of scrimmage, mixing it up against the Sean, those are the things on tape that have given him the most trouble.
All right, well, everybody's with their family this weekend coming off of Thanksgiving, so they're probably all waiting for Chatham's choice. Where should people be putting their money? It's New England -3, over-under is 46.5.
Well, what you do is you go out and you do a little, Cyber Monday's coming up. I don't know, hopefully you didn't blow it all on Black Friday. But I would say, do a little research. Find that item you want for your child. Find 2 prices. Don't bet above what would prevent you from purchasing on the other one.
Got it.
This is one of those weeks where I'm going to be honest, a little uncertainty, folks, because I can't give you like a hardcore, -3 Patriots looks tremendous. But I'm saying that kind of expecting that they're all playing and they're all healthy.
Right.
We get into the middle of the first quarter and I say, go spend the kids' presents on this. And I'm obviously being facetious here, but in sort of the land of wagering, you'd like to have some knowns. You want as many knowns going forward as you possibly can. On a normal vacuum week, Patriots -3 down there. This is a definitively better team than the other. But if they end up sick, they come out flat. It's not just that, hey, they'll be available. They don't get a practice week together with one another. They were out. So that is the kind of thing that makes me pause a little bit. So the points issue, because of that, man, just way too much sway. I mean, I think we're at 46 or whatever it was. I just, it could come out and be flat on both sides. It could go wildly either direction. There's just not enough knowns here to want to make a points wager. I say stick with the -3, but this is one of those weeks where I'd say pull it back. Too much uncertainty out there. Take Patriots -3, but with a degree of not so sure.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say pull it back a little bit.
Pull it back.
Yeah,
Well,
this is an interesting week.
This is the first 2-plane game I've ever had to wager on.
All right, well, there you have it. Now, kickoff time is 8:20 p.m. in Houston. Will you be doing anything on NESN later?
Yeah, we'll be post-game in essence, so make sure you check that out. We'll be on right after the game. And Bednarik?
There we go. That was it.
Bednarik?
Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us. Enjoy your Sunday night football. I know we will.